Hello Star Trek fans, video hobbyists, and fellow animators. I'm about halfway through the second stage of production in the Star Trek Unity project, so now that I'm pretty deep into this, it's a good opportunity to discuss how the project has been organized, how production has evolved, and to invite you behind the scenes. The overall project has been organized into 4 stages, with each stage roughly representing a sequence in the movie. The exception to this is Stage 4, which really involves isolated shots of the Enterprise found later in the movie. The first stage has already been completed. In The Wrath of Khan, the Kobayashi Maru sequence is the first instance of recycled TMP footage, and that editing work was featured in the July announcement video. Do check out that video if you haven't already. TMP recycling was used again in both the arrival and departure sequences. Originally, I was content and confident to stage everything in dry dock in keeping with the original film, but some fan suggestions and a nagging film detail eventually compelled me to up the stakes a bit and move everything into Spacedock.
Lieutenant, have you ever piloted a starship out of Spacedock?
Never, sir.
There you have it. Spock clearly refers to Spacedock and not dry dock. And so began an intense couple of weeks where I had to switch gears to develop a film quality interior of Spacedock. Now, in chapter 1 of this story, I found an old Spacedock interior mesh and was able to redress it with sufficient detail. It looks pretty good, but what you need to understand is that the reason it looks good is because a lot of those surfaces are images from the film. There is no real geometry there, which means much of the visual effect can break down when the camera is too tight. But the immediate issue for me was the doors. The original doors were just too simple. They lacked that interlocking geometry that I would need for a convincing egress shot, and I didn't have the skill set to effect such detailed shaping. Fortunately, a generous modeler named Patch answered my call for help and delivered some truly impressive door replacements. Now, at that point, I was pretty much set and ready to resume editing and animation, until in chapter 2 of this story, Patch swallows the red pill, becomes inspired or possibly obsessed, and decides, what the hell, I'll just continue working and build a whole new Spacedock interior. It's that new model which is now being used for the Unity project. So on the one hand, I did waste almost 2 weeks preparing a model that I wouldn't use, but on the other hand, we did end up with a really nice new interior set that is HD ready and can stand up proudly to any camera angle. Thanks again, Patch. Alright, this is the fun part of the discussion. A key aspect of replacement editing is that many of the decisions about time have been made for us. So rather than controlling both how and when things will occur in our edited movie, we are principally concerned with what things will occur at designated moments. The original movie structure has already constrained the shot placement, but occasionally there will be opportunity to inject a bit of cleverness and creativity by resequencing the original footage. For example, moving shot 1 to shot 3 and vice versa. Now, this should not be confused with reconstructive editing, but the point is that even simple replacement editing can be handled at a skillful level to effect substantial change to an existing movie. Now, the reason I mention this is we will see a perfect example where simple replacement techniques produce results which are anything but simple. Regardless of the type of project I'm working on, one of the very first things I do is pull up the source footage to analyze the timeline and to begin mapping out my work. So here, our original sequence is presented, and that blue range indicates my actual workspace, the part that I need to be concerned with. At time 0 on the left is the first shot that needs to be updated, and at frame 1497 on the right is the beginning of the next scene. Thus, I now know that the events I'm depicting span 1497 frames, which is a tad over 62 seconds. This is important because this sequence pretty much plays out in real time. And what I mean by that is there are no passage of time devices in place. So I have exactly 62 seconds to dock with the Enterprise. You can see also there are those various markers scattered throughout the sequence range. Some of those markers represent a shot change, so I know where my shots are located, and I can also use that to determine how long they run. The other markers are in place to alert me of important events. They could be continuity constraints in the video, for example, the way an object is oriented, or they could be audio events such as important musical moments. All these marked events will influence my decisions about how best to compose the new shots. And in fact, this point also will be immediately relevant in our case when we examine the music for this sequence. In fact, let's have a look and listen to the original sequence.
Enterprise to Admiral Kirk's shuttle. You're cleared for docking. Approach port side torpedo bay.
Enterprise, this is Admiral Kirk's party on final approach.
Enterprise welcomes you. Prepare for docking.
I hate inspections.
I'm delighted. Any chance to go aboard the Enterprise.
One of the most useful details to come out of this analysis was the relationship between the new music for Star Trek II and the old recycled footage. There is an obvious musical reveal cue that's aligned with the fourth TMP shot. But as we've seen many times here, the Enterprise is always revealed. This is a consequence of trying to reuse footage from a much longer, much slower reveal sequence. But as it plays out in Star Trek II, the music reveal feels like a missed opportunity, and such missed opportunities are, in fact, what drive fan editing. So we now have a well-defined editing mission. Over the course of several shots, we must dock in 62 seconds while also delaying, if possible, the appearance of the Enterprise. Moving the sequence to inside Spacedock actually made this mission kind of easy, although it did take me 2 attempts to recognize the simplicity here. So in draft number one, it was already understood that the terminal structures in Spacedock, they provide the perfect concealment strategy. What wasn't so obvious to me at first was how best to navigate here. I didn't think it possible to have exterior establishing shots and also dock up inside in the 1 minute span. So I established the travel pod already cruising the interior. There was just one problem. With more than 50% of the sequence being used to reach the terminal for the reveal, that meant that the travel pod had too much remaining distance to cover. Now, you have likely already worked out what the solution is, but I was on the wrong side of a mirror universe that day and just couldn't get my brain to function. Of course, I was thinking about this all back-asswards, because if we approach from the opposite direction, not only do we shrink the docking distance, but we can extend our establishing shots to include 1 or 2 nice space exterior views, which of course are always good in a Star Trek movie. I said I was halfway through this sequence, so I suppose I owe you a partial preview. Here's how the second draft looks from start to reveal.
Enterprise to Admiral Kirk's shuttle. You're cleared for docking. Approach port side torpedo bay.
Enterprise, this is Admiral Kirk's party on final approach.
Enterprise welcomes you. Prepare for docking.
I hate inspections.
I'm delighted. Any chance to go aboard the Enterprise.
Well, I, for one, am glad to have you at the helm for 3 weeks.
When the second sequence is properly finished, of course, I will certainly make sure it's available at the Delimited Productions YouTube and Facebook communities. Remember to hit that subscribe button, click like if you're feeling groovy, and stay tuned for more. Until next time, this is Antimatter.